Hi, welcome to the channel. Today's video is titled, What if Texas was an independent country? Makes total sense. I think we already checked the video about the history of California, right? But this makes sense. So we're going to check this video together and I would love your thoughts and your contribution in the comments below. Let's dive right in.
This video is done in a collaboration with Wisecrack, so make sure to check out their video next. So this is a very special video for me, because as I'm sure many of you already know, I live in Texas, and have lived here for nearly my entire life. So naturally, I've always wondered what Texas would be like if it was actually its own independent country. It used to be one once for a quick point in history between 1836 and 1846 before it got annexed by the United States, but what would this independent Texas look like today if it ever happened? First of all, Texas basically gets second place in everything inside the US. It has the second largest population behind California, the second largest economy also behind California, and the second largest area behind Alaska. But that doesn't mean that Texas is small. The Texan population stands at 28,305,000 people, which would make it the 50th most populous country in the world, ahead of a lot bigger countries like Australia.
28 million? That's 28 miller. That's number 50, and I can see Ghana as 49. What's a state in America? What? I mean, a state in the United States of America. 28 miller. $28. So even let's see, look at all these other countries that are like 48, 49. So if these ones countries are like, let's say they have like 30 million, let's just exaggerate to say 48, 49 countries has they have 30 million people, the population is 30 million. Texas, a state, is 28 million. And I'm saying Australia has 54. My eyes are not paining me.
While Texas is much smaller than Australia in terms of land, it's much bigger than any country in Europe is except for Russia. Texas is so big on a European scale that you could fit all of Poland inside of it and still have room to drive around the edges. The town of Texarkana in the east is closer to Chicago, Illinois than to the city of El Paso on the western side of Texas.
Really? Really? And Chicago is up. For real? Wait. For real? How did it?
The town of Texarkana in the east is closer to Chicago, Illinois than to the city of El Paso on the western side of Texas. If it was independent, Texas would be the 39th largest country in the world in terms of land area. But the final big thing about Texas is its economy. The Texan economy stands currently at a GDP of 1.599 trillion US dollars. This is enormous and would make Texas the 11th largest economy in the world, beating out other giant countries like South Korea, Russia, and Australia again.
And I'm saying Canada. Canada is a nation. Let me not just say country. It's a nation, right? And Texas is what? A state. Hello? A state in the United States. Hello? Hello? Yeah? And we're seeing Russia and South Korea as 12 and 13. Russia. Oh, I mean, we're talking about Russia, South Korea. Texas is a state in the United States of America. Hello? Take it back first. What?
2.599 trillion US dollars. This is enormous and would make Texas the 11th largest economy in the world, beating out other giant countries like South Korea, Russia, and Australia again. Big companies like American Airlines, AT&T, Dell, and ExxonMobil all have headquarters currently located in Texas, which dramatically adds to this economic power. Texas is probably one of the few US states that actually could succeed as an independent country, and here are a few reasons why. First, it has a coast, and therefore access to the world's shipping routes. Houston is the 8th busiest port in the United States and already has shipping routes connected with Brazil, the Netherlands, Germany, India, and China. Second, Texas is what's called a tax donor state, meaning that the Texan state government sends more money to the federal government than it receives back in benefits. For every $1 that Texas sends to Washington, it receives back just 94 cents. This means that Texas could fund all of their current government expenditures and still have enough left over to generate a nice budget surplus. Compared with other states like Mississippi, who gets $3 back from the federal government for every $1 they send, Texas would be in a great financial situation at first upon becoming independent. The final reason Texas would be self-sustainable is energy. Let's switch over to a map of the US
Let me just say this. But do you think the US will let Texas, like, if Texas decide today they want to be a country, they want to break out of the United States, do you think the United States will will say go, or would agree? I don't think so. It's just like you having, I don't know. It's just like you working in a certain company, and you play a key role in the company, right? And more like you're like the company's eye. You generate majority of the revenue for the company, and one day you got tired and you're like, you want to resign. No company is gonna let you. I mean, hello. How is that company just gonna say, okay, we're letting you go? No. You say what? Wow.
The final reason Texas would be self-sustainable is energy. Let's switch over to a map of the US electrical grid to see how that's the case. There are only 3 main power grids in the mainland United States that the US operates: the Western grid, the Eastern grid, and the Texan grid. Texas has its own fully independent electrical grid that wouldn't be influenced by the rest of the US. If another state like, say, New Mexico decided to leave, the rest of the US could just shut off that part of the grid and deny them electrical access. Not so with Texas. But here's the really interesting part. Back in 1840, Texas used to be a lot bigger. Back then, it claimed about half of modern New Mexico, and also chunks of Oklahoma, Kansas, Colorado, and even as far north as Wyoming. If for some reason the modern Texas was expanded back to this territory today, it wouldn't really add as much as you think. The population would only go up by a little over 1.2 million people, because besides the towns of Santa Fe in New Mexico and Pueblo in Colorado, most of this extra land is pretty rural. But back in 1840, the entirety of Texas was even more rural. Back then, the entire population of Texas was an incredible 70,000 people, basically the size of a small suburb of either Dallas or Houston is today. The only settlements you can see on maps from back then were San Antonio, Houston, and Santa Fe, which were all basically islands of people separated by hundreds or thousands of kilometers of open and unpopulated land. Texas has changed dramatically since then in just a little over 1.5 centuries, from a rural backwater on the fringes of the world to an economic powerhouse home to tens of millions. But there's one more thing that we haven't touched on yet, and that's if Texas could actually legally do this. The answer is a definitive no. The US government has made it explicitly clear that no states can ever leave the Union, since the last time that was tried didn't really go over so well. This
Nope. Capital letter no. Because where are you going? Hello? Big nope. Nope.
that no states can ever leave the Union, since the last time that was tried didn't really go over so well. This includes Texas, who can never ever hope to compete with the US military. Texas does have a pretty weird clause though in its constitution that allows the state to at any time divide itself into 5 different smaller states. Texas doesn't need permission from the US Congress to do this, and it would immediately quintuple their own power in the US Senate from having 2 senators up to 10 senators. This could enable Texas to influence the US government more heavily, but likely wouldn't help it to achieve independence. The vast majority of people living inside of Texas don't want independence anyway, but it's always just fun to speculate.
Sure.
The secession of Texas is just one of the many themes of one of my all-time favorite games, Deus Ex. It's about a grim future where
Okay, this is an ad. This is an ad. I think we've gotten to the part where it's an ad. But yeah, this makes total sense. This makes total sense. Wow. Do you live in Texas? What are your thoughts regarding this? This makes total sense. And honestly, I've got no words. I've got no words at all. Because tell me something. Why would you think the United States of America would let Texas go? Like, why? Nope. But this is mind blowing. It is mind blowing, and it just, I'm like, what? But yeah, I love that we checked this still. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all that stuff. And until next time, see you in the next video.